Hello everyone and welcome to English 1001. This is your co-teacher Alicia Walton, and today we're going to be going over the Allen and Bacon chapter 6 section on writing an annotated bibliography. Throughout these slides you might notice that there are some references to chapter 7. Please disregard that. This is an older slide presentation deck, but it contains a lot of good information. So just ignore that. We again are going to be working on chapter 6, which starts on page 120 of your textbook. And we're going to be talking about the annotated bibliography. It's called that in just a minute. So for this chapter, your learning objectives are going to be that you will pose or form a significant and possibly problematic research question. Next, you'll be exploring that problem or significant research question and narrating your thinking along that path. After that, you're going to be thinking about your problem dialectically and finding resources or sources to back up the information that you wish to dive into. And during this process, you're going to take very good notes that will help you along the way. So the reason why you write an annotated bibliography, it's actually, there's probably, I would say, 3 main reasons for writing one. And this does spell it out, but there's me reading this from the screen, and then there's me just, being frank with you, right? So, to be blunt, it's a good way to force yourself to keep notes on a topic. It's a good way to help you think your way through some of the research that you find. It's not uncommon for a student to choose a topic to research and then start doing the research and end up changing their mind about the angle or the actual research question that they're going to choose to dive into. Here's an example. A couple of semesters ago, I had a student who wanted to write about, we had an argumentative paper or a researched argument paper. And for that paper, I asked them to write an annotated bibliography to go along with it. It's a very useful tool. So the student wanted to write about how soy was not healthful. It wasn't a healthy element to include in your diet, right? So he went along, he started his research, and about 2 weeks in, he came into class and he said, "Ms. Walton, I need to change my research question. Is that okay?" And I said, "Okay, sure. Why? What happened? What was the problem?" Well, come to find out, he had been reading a lot of articles online that said that soy was not healthy and that it caused all these problems, especially for men, etc. But come to find out, the more he did actual research, it turned out that a lot of journalists had misread this one study on soy and its effects on the body, and that everything else that he could find supported how wonderful soy was and how it reduces your cholesterol and all this wonderful stuff. And he said, they got it wrong, so I have to change this. So not only did he change his research question, the focus for his paper that he was going to be working on after the annotated bibliography, but he also started eating more soy because come to find out, there was more research that supported that it was good. And of course, he also figured out that there were a lot of journalists who were misreading some of the research they found, and that does happen. So you might find something along those lines depending on what you choose for your topic. Now, our class, of course, focuses on the book Nickel and Dime, so you wouldn't be working with soy. It's very unlikely that you would anyway. But there's still an opportunity there for you to change your way of thinking about something. It might not be as drastic as that student and his experience was, but there's a lot of opportunity there for you to think in new ways about the information that you're getting. And so, as this slide points out, not only are you taking notes, finding your research, keeping track of your research, taking notes about the research. So your notes would include things like, is this actually helpful? Is this research too old for me to use? So if you're talking about something like the use, doing research on automated cars, for instance, you're going to use the latest research that you can find, right? You're not going to use something that you find from 30 years ago. I don't know what you would find from 30 years ago, but chances are you're going to mark that off the list. So that would be something that might be in your notes, and it would also change how you were doing your research. So that's why it's important to do your research and take notes on it as you go along. Okay, so moving on. So the exploratory thinking, we've talked a little bit about that. It keeps the problem alive. It doesn't try to settle the matter. So, and it also, in exploratory thinking and considering points of view and different points of view, as I said before, the student who had talked about using soy as his topic, and his research argument was that soy was not good for the body. It wasn't good for your health. We should stop eating it. He ended up changing his mind about it. Completely changed his mind. And he dug into a lot of the details. So that was a big twist, or a big flip. But for you, it might not be as big of a change. It might be something more subtle. And in terms of keeping the problem alive, doing the research and keeping the annotated bibliography, it keeps you focused on it for a long period of time. Because let's face it, when you have to write a research paper and you're required to do something like this bibliography, there's the temptation to do it all at the last minute, which isn't a very good idea with this assignment, by the way. But there's also the temptation to just kind of even shove it into a few weeks and forget about it afterwards. Well, this gives you the opportunity to kind of think about it for a little bit, jot down some notes about one source, maybe take a few days off of it, even a week or so, come back to it, put some more down. And when you have that kind of time, it almost percolates in your head. It gives it a chance to sit there and simmer and move on. And you can even think of, if you give yourself more time to work on this bibliography, you may also come across new ways of doing your research or finding another database to look into. And as this slide points out, it also gives you time to consider some of the strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes, you can think about something until, you're about to get a headache from it, and then you take a break, you step outside your bedroom or your dorm room, and you go for a cup of coffee, and while you're sitting there drinking a cup of coffee, something makes sense then. That happens to me a lot, actually. So it allows those kinds of things to happen when you give yourself time to work on the annotated bibliography. So you want to make sure that you focus on a question, problem, or issue that genuinely perplexes you. You don't want to dwell a ton. You don't want to let it take over your life, of course. I don't want that to happen. And neither does Miss Coster. And we're not asking that you solve whatever it is either. I'm not asking that you solve world hunger or any of the issues in the United States regarding economics and low-wage labor issues. But we're just asking that you think about it and pick a point, choose a side, and argue it. So dialectical thinking explores multiple perspectives, as I said before. When you start working on something like an annotated bibliography at the beginning of a semester, and you write the researched argument towards the middle of the semester, you give all kinds of room and space for some of this thinking to pop up, as I mentioned before. And your sources can help you understand those perspectives as well. And likewise, those perspectives can help you understand the sources. As this slide mentions, double entry logs help you track what you read. So when I'm writing an annotated bibliography, mine is maybe a little less focused than what yours is going to be, because this is likely your first or possibly your second time writing one. But when I write an annotated bibliography for myself, I keep track of what I find when I first find it. And by double entry, what that means is I sometimes go back and add a little bit of something. You don't always have to do that, but occasionally you might. You might think to yourself, I like the direction this is going in. I'm going to try to find something related to this in my next research endeavor. So here's an example of some of the research log entries for the annotated bibliography. I'm looking over this, and you notice that yours doesn't have to look exactly like this. First off, this is just an example, right? So I might not arrange it exactly like this, but I do like how there's a lot of attention to detail. So we have a date there, so that there's an understanding of when you found it, because you might go back and say, okay, so it's very easy for some people anyway to find 10 pieces of research that you know that you want to use right away. And you might start going through it and realize, oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And then as you do that, you might think, okay, well, I need to go back and do this again. It's good to have a date recorded because you can keep track of not only where your thoughts were at that time, because your thoughts are going to evolve, but it can also help you keep track of when you found it. For instance, if you happen to find this piece on from the Chronicle of Philanthropy on February 8th, and then you later on go back in March and do a little bit more, you might need that date to help you separate out some of the information that you found. It's easy to get some of these confused with one another as well, and that's really a great reason to keep these notes for yourself. And in some fields, depending on the field that you're going to be going into, you might be required to have these as you do your own research. So it's really good to learn how to do this. So for us, we're going to be following a specific format. Each field, by the way, has their own way of doing this, but essentially it's the same information. So you'll notice too that we talk about where it was found, gather as much details as you can there. The last thing you want to do is find a title for something, record it, not put an author, or put an author there, accidentally misspell it, and then forget to put the magazine title or the journal title that you have, because then sometimes you can find excellent research and then lose track of it. You do not want to do that. So write down as much as you can. Sometimes if you lose track of research, and I've done this before myself, you have to go searching through Google to find quotes from your notes. You do not want to put yourself there. It's not always as easy as it sounds. Okay, drafting advice. So narrate your research process. What information did you look for? Why did you look for it? Talk a little bit about and explain how and why you selected your sources. Use both open and closed form features to be clear about your unfolding chronology and be clear about your thinking. Illustrate how you are keeping an open mind and wrestling with ideas. Again, you're not going to write down every single little bit about this, but these are points that you might want to consider writing about, right? I think I'm doubling up too much there. Anyway, this is something you might want to keep in mind, but it's certainly not a requirement. So here's the framework for an exploratory essay. So the exploratory essay, you start here, gives your introduction, and it starts with a problematic or significant question. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as a research question. It shows why you're interested in it. And remember, the last thing you want to do is pick a topic you're not interested in for this. It's perfectly acceptable if you need to change your topic early on because you realize you're not interested in it. Please do not get to week 4 or week 5 or week 8, heaven help us all, and change your mind about your topic because you're not interested in it. If you become uninterested in it at that point, it's likely because you're just tired of it for a minute and you might want to take like a couple days away from it and then come back. But you really want to make sure that you choose your topic and stick with it. So Body 1, Section 1 of the first source, this gives you an idea of what you can have here, and you can kind of follow this along. Also remember that for the annotated bibliography that you're going to be writing for this course, we have very specific questions and sections for you to answer. So you won't be writing all of this that we've gone over here. These are just suggestions for what you could do. But you will be paying close attention to the requirements for the assignment that we give you in the assignment sheet. So a bibliography is an alphabetized list of sources that gives authors' names, source titles, and publication information. The annotation part, that's the notes and the evaluation. Creating an annotation. Follow the directions. Please follow the directions. While these slides and my presentation here have given you some ideas for how you can create an annotation, again, you want to make sure that you follow the directions on our assignment sheet. So, some review questions. What's the importance of exploratory writing? Think about that. What are the key features of an exploratory essay? So we went over that pretty well. The exploratory essay and the annotated bibliography kind of work side by side. What we're going to be doing for our course is a little bit different, but it's good for you to know about what an exploratory essay is. So while you won't be responsible for the exploratory essay portion of this, you will be responsible for the annotated bibliography. And what are the key features of the annotated bibliography? The key features of the annotated bibliography is a bibliography, a listing of sources in alphabetical order that have annotations with it, or notes. And what are the key features of the annotated bibliography you write for me and Ms. Coster? Those are in the assignment sheet. So there you have it. We've reviewed all of Chapter 6, and we've talked about the annotated bibliography as well as the exploratory essay. So if you have any questions or concerns about any of this material, please feel free to reach out to me. Make sure after you look at this video that you go through the schedule for this week. Make sure that you've watched any and all of the attached lectures and that you complete any of the necessary material or get started on anything that is going to be required as far as future work is concerned. Again, if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to reach out to me or Ms. Coster. Thank you for watching.